Hello, everyone. This is Stefan Schreibeis, the Superintendent at Glendale Public Schools. Today, I have joining with me Dusty Eaton from A&E Architects. And I just wanted to, I thought it would be a really cool idea to interview some of the people who are part of this process and just really try to inform our public a little bit more from the videos that we have out there. And I thought this format might be a little bit better instead of just listening to me all the time, getting the information out. So welcome, Dusty. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Stefan. Look forward to it.
Awesome. And I kind of decided that I just wanted to start off and just ask three questions, and I figured we would just kind of build upon that and just kind of just talk about it a little bit and this process and so forth. So if you don't mind, I'll just kind of ask you three questions, Dusty.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, the first question I thought would be appropriate for asking for you is you have been leading the process of these bond measures and helping to determine the best impact for Glendive. Could you just explain, in your opinion, how this plan has come about?
Yeah, you bet. When we started this process, we said, I think I said at the very first meeting, this project and the outcome of this process will be a success if it's a true reflection of Glendive community.
Absolutely.
And we just know that from experience in doing this, the last thing I want to do is come project a vision that I have, because it's certainly not about me or about any one member of this team. It's not about just about you, Stefan, or about any one group. It really needs to be a reflection of the entire community and of the teachers and parents and district leadership and community members of Glendive. Because when we do that successfully, when we make the outcome of this about if we make it a reflection of everybody, then it's true, and it really listens to what Glendive needs. And I think through a long process, we did exactly that. We had a lot of opportunities for community input. We held community meetings. We did community-wide surveys. We had a great core team that worked long hours of volunteer time to help explore options, to look at scenarios, to say what could we possibly do. And I think that's the other important aspect here, is that we had to run all scenarios to the ground, good, bad. We had to test them, see if it made sense, and then either continue developing that idea or throw it out and say that's not the right fit. We tested numerous ideas over time. We tested them both with the core team, and then we also put them out to the community, and we just ran a very transparent process. We said, let's just be really clear, really transparent about this, upfront and honest, and just show the entire community what we're looking at, what options we're exploring. And so through numerous community meetings, I remember one community meeting, we put 12 different options up, and we just said, okay, let's put these up, and then let's get feedback. And so we had them up around the cafeteria, and we had the community walk around and put sticky notes on ideas that they liked or didn't like, and just give us that kind of feedback. And so the process really went like that, where we put them out there, then we narrowed it down, and we narrowed it down further. And that really, by doing that and being really genuine about it, it really ensures that we've really explored all possible scenarios before ultimately landing on the one that we did, and being able to move that forward.
Yeah, and one of the things for me, I know I found valuable because I wasn't part of the bond process the last time around, and so being able to be a part of this process and see how it works, to go from that 12 scenarios to the one scenarios, I just thought, and really gathering that feedback from surveys and all the community meetings, just like you were saying, was a pretty neat process, and to see how this thing really kind of fit together at the very end. And it was really cool to see that the scenario that we have in front of us actually it wasn't even one of the 12 that we originally started with. It wasn't even really close to one of the ones that we started with, just because every time we would just keep taking that information and changing it again and trying to get it to be a true reflection of our community, which I thought was
that's a really good point, Stefan. I think, and I said that I think at one of our first meetings, that I think I promised everybody on the committee that no matter what we all come at this first meeting thinking is the right solution, I can promise you that it won't be, because out of this process comes new ideas, and
Right.
those new ideas come from all different perspectives. They come from different people in the community. They come from the students and the teachers and community members that all put their feedback forward, and they say, "Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this?" And we haven't done our due diligence unless we've really listened, and
Right.
we have to. And so I had said at that first meeting, I asked everybody to put any preconceived ideas they have about what the right solution is to the side. Leave those at home, and let's approach this with a completely open mind. Let's approach this and say, we really need to listen. We really want to make this about the best idea coming forward. And by being true, I always kept saying through this process, let's be genuine and true to the process. Let's make sure that we're not being short-sighted and jumping to conclusions. And by going through a long process, we worked on this for, it was in excess of, I think, about 8 months.
Right.
And that's, by doing that and really going through a lengthy process, we can ensure that we did listen and we did vet those different ideas.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned genuine and transparent, and that's something that I feel like we have to be as a district, especially when we're asking for tax dollars and stuff moving forward. Because at the end of the day, no matter what we do, and no matter where this vote goes, our community is still a community, and we still got to move forward. And so, being genuine up front and transparent, so that to make sure that they, everyone gets the information that they need. And the hardest part is, you can't reach everyone. We really struggled with how do we get information out there to people, because everyone gets their information in a totally different way. And sometimes if you look at social media, people get missed. If, some people don't read the paper, some people, and so we were really struggling with how to get that information out. But regardless, that transparency and stuff was out there, and we really put it out there. And, going back to, what you were talking about with just the different scenarios. There was a couple scenarios I know for me that I wanted more than the other ones, and I thought they would be really cool. But each one of them, like you said, we kind of had to drill down and see, is this right for Glendive? And there was a couple of them that I was kind of rooting for right away, even though I knew we shouldn't have any preconceived notions. But then it wouldn't work out because of X or whatever it was, and it just wasn't the best option. And so, and I think everyone on the team, and if you went to any of the community meetings, you could see this process kind of unfolding. I just thought it was such a cool process to go through.
Yeah, and I give you a lot of credit. You've put a lot of work into this, and from the very beginning, you were a big advocate of saying, we're going to be honest and we're going to be transparent. As a leader in this community, that's my number one obligation.
Absolutely.
And we have a responsibility to do that, being in this position, and being, that there's really we're talking about taxpayer dollars and the fiduciary responsibility. We want to be just completely transparent. And so with every meeting, we just, even when we thought, well, this is more expensive than maybe we were hoping, or this one has implications around a certain school, or a certain student count, or whatever those challenges were, we always took the position of, let's just be really honest and transparent. It's the information we know, let's put it out for feedback. So it was a good process.
Right. And I know I've said this before, but the hardest part for me is there was a point where I was very specific as to what I wanted at the very beginning of this process, because I did not want the cost to be up. And I don't know if you remember, but right at the beginning, I was like, this thing needs to be $32 million because it's $1 million less than last time we went out, $33 million. And we put $1 million into lights for a performance contract, and I want to show the value of what we're trying to do in our district to not have to go to the taxpayers, because we're paying the performance contract off with energy savings. And then my opinion on that had to really change because of where these numbers started coming back. And when critical needs come back in the district is $32 million in the 4 buildings, it was like, holy cow. And that doesn't even take care of some of the issues that's going to happen in 5 to 10 years. And I want to be transparent with people, and I want to tell everyone, but knowing that I'm going to have to come back in 5 to 10 years and trying to get this bond passed is not transparent. And how do I tell them that? Yeah, we need you to pass this for critical needs, but I'm going to be back in 5 to 10 years, asking for more money. And it was like, that's not right. And then if something catastrophic did happen, which could have, because the critical needs weren't going to deal with some of that stuff as well, then we wouldn't even be able to do that because of bonding capacity. And that really just kind of shifted how I thought about things. It's like, wow, like we really need to come up with a solution that's going to be good, for the long term for our taxpayers, so they're not having to keep pouring money back into this and back into this and back into this, especially with the bonding interest so low. It
Right.
just, the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. And that really just kind of shifted how I thought about things, which was really interesting as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you really have this point where we always are trying to keep those costs as low as possible, of course, and we're trying to get the most impact for those dollars. And you also have to look at the long term impact of not doing something, right? If
Right.
we so we have to assess those critical needs and start to talk about whether or not it's going to have a bigger and more costly impact in the future, and what's the best use of dollars today. And
Right.
then going through that process to set those bond amount is really just a key part of it.
Well, that kind of leads into my second question, and for the sake of time, I know we need to probably move on. But the second question I have is, through your process of the facilities assessments that you had to do on our buildings, what is your understanding of the critical needs of the district?
Yeah, we did some in-depth assessments. Really, before we can start any planning for the future development, the most important thing we can do is just understand the foundational information of the current assets that the district has. What are the conditions of the buildings? And it's important to note, when we're looking at building conditions, we're looking at that both from physical conditions, infrastructure, deferred maintenance, kind of challenges of old buildings, but we're also looking at educational adequacy.
Right.
Are those spaces meeting the needs of teaching and learning today? And we found a number of great things that happen in the school buildings at Glendive. I mean, what the teachers are doing within those spaces is absolutely remarkable, and it just speaks to the quality of education that students could get in Glendive. It speaks to the quality of teachers and leadership. I mean, I was just constantly going through those buildings. I was constantly amazed at what those teachers are doing in spaces where, after I would see the great teaching and learning, they would say, well, what you're not seeing is we actually only have one outlet in this room, or it gets to 110 degrees, or all these challenges that
Right.
are really impacting what they're able to do. And I just kept thinking that how much we could raise the bar, and the level of education and opportunities that could occur with the right space, and with spaces as simple as, hey, we don't have to worry about sewer lines breaking and shutting down the school building. Just simple things like that we expect from our schools. And so as we went through that process, we found a number of certainly won't bore everybody with all the details, but we found a number of issues. And what we're really looking at is critical infrastructure that could fail and cause a catastrophic failure for a building. We want to understand, okay, if we're looking at some of the main sewer lines in a building, for example, if we're having continual failures occur, what's going to happen when that major failure happens? And then what's next? Or boilers, and these really critical infrastructure systems within a building that we really have reached a point. And what we found is that many of those systems reached a point where you guys have done a good job putting band-aids on them for many years, many years, and a lot of them are past that point. They're really at the point of being on the verge, at that threshold of critical failure. And when that happens, we're going to have a major problem. And the frustrating part about when something like that happens is that it ends up being more costly than if we solve it now, right? Then all of a sudden you're talking about buildings being shut down, kids not being able to attend school, having secondary kind of ripple effects. When you have a system shut down, it can start having a lot of other impacts. At one of the meetings that we were at, this last winter, I know just before we arrived there, another steam pipe had blown, and then that pipe had rippled up the gym floor and caused all kinds of moisture problems in the wood floor of the gym. And you just start to have those kind of snowballing effects, and they can be really detrimental to.
Yeah, because we wouldn't have caught that was a scary one because we wouldn't have caught that one. Then all of a sudden the whole gym floor replacement, and luckily we only had a little part of it by the locker room. Yeah, it was.
Right,
I forgot all about that one.
Yeah, so it's just it's really about that understanding of, hey, which systems have reached a point where they're really beyond repair. And we looked at a lot of the mechanical equipment, for example, to just say and did an assessment. And a lot of that equipment is, we had pieces that were 15 years past the end of their life, and there's been some good job that the district has done by putting band-aids on it, but many of those are kind of past that.
Right. I know a lot of there's some people in our community that just I guess think that we should continue to do that and so forth. And one of the things that going through this process and taking the seat 2 years ago as a superintendent, some of the things I did not know before I stepped into this seat is how much stuff does go wrong on a day-to-day basis in our buildings. But what happens behind the scenes is we just try to fix. I mean, there was probably 4 days last year that we were scrambling to make sure that we didn't have to close one of our schools down because of certain things that happened. And we ended up having to close Jefferson down one day because we just couldn't, we tried doing everything that night. We even had a company come, and they tried to, basically it was a water issue, and a root had gotten into one of the pipes, and they were trying to, we were trying to find a generator. We were trying to find all these different things, and they finally had the fire department there, and then I think the bit broke or something, and we had to end up canceling school. But I think the district's, in my opinion, the district's done a really good job of not telling the community all the different things and just trying to take care of it and band-aid it so it keeps going. And the hardest part is, because of that, people don't understand really what the critical needs are in the district as well. And just like this weekend, we had at my house, we ended up getting 3.5 inches of rain on Saturday, and we had almost every single administrator in their buildings, plus custodians, plus teachers, taking care of leaks. We were 4 for 4 for leaks, so all of our buildings were leaking, and we were trying to do that. And everyone's like, "Why aren't you getting that out to the public?" And I'm just like, "Well, if I just put this out to the public just like this, they're going to think I'm trying to sell this bond with just giving them information, just because our district just hasn't been doing that. We haven't been doing that, so it looked like a ploy." And so I've been trying to figure out, how do you do that so you still stay, keep your integrity and that transparency, because we want to be transparent. And so that's a hard line to try to figure out where that is. And so I've learned that I need to start getting information out so that people do know what's happening. But the critical needs are here. I mean, there's a lot of things, just like you said.
Yeah, and it's often a misconception. I think it's an important point that there's often this misconception that it's easy to point a finger and say, "Well, why haven't you maintained the buildings?" Right? That's just if we're having deferred maintenance or ongoing maintenance challenges and system failure, why haven't we maintained those? But the reality to that is the limited operating and maintenance dollars that a district like Glendive has, and any district in the state, based on our model of state funding or lack thereof for schools, the challenge becomes you have only so many dollars to spread very thin every single year. And so you end up, when systems are new, it's much easier, right? There's systems that don't take as much maintenance, but when you end up with systems that are 15 years past the end of their life, there really does become challenging as to spread those dollars as effectively as possible. And you guys, in our assessments of the buildings, you've done a fantastic job of that. You've been able to, and then there's just some things that some of the just simple constructability things, like the way elements of Jefferson, for example, were built, they're just buildings that aren't simply designed to last that
Right.
long. And so you have failures of systems that really aren't. It's no surprise. It's a system that wasn't ever intended to last that long. And so as those systems kind of continue to fail, that's where it really presents challenges to the to you guys with those limited
Right.
dollars.
And, one of the things is listening to you talk made me think of, when comes to money, we're really trying to figure out how do we find grants and how do we find different things. Because back about a little while ago, quite a bit of years ago, the state did have infrastructure stuff that schools could go and take a part of and really get help from the state. And that kind of all went away. And they kind of brought back these grants this year, this DLA grant that we're in the process. Our last board meeting, they just approved me of submitting 2 grants, both for $750,000, and so we have the chance of getting like 1.5 million. But the hard part with that, and it looks like I just lost Dusty. Um, you there,
Looks like,
Dusty?
yeah, audio is still here. It looks like the video is
Your
reconnecting.
video. So I'm gonna keep talking. If you can like see if your video will come back, um, but yeah. So on the last board meeting, we just they approved that for me, and I have to get that done by September 30th. And so we're working with a couple entities to try to do that. But it's a highly competitive grants. We're competing against people in Dawson County. We're competing against people all over the state. And there's only $21.5 million up for grabs in Montana. It's just lacking for stuff. An unfortunate part about it is, Montana kind of puts the ownership of buildings and stuff on local taxpayers. And so trying to be able to do some of these grants, if it wasn't for the bond, if the bond doesn't pass, we don't have matching monies to finish these projects that we're going for. So we had to pick projects that are critical needs, but they're a lot more than $1.5 million. And so trying to figure out what that looks like is difficult, and so hopefully that doesn't hurt our chances. But we just don't have money laying around to finish these critical need projects. So the bond becomes part of that, and hopefully, if they both pass and we get the stuff, it'll help with the taxes on that and so forth. So.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So we probably have to finish this without video. But we're kind of down to the last question anyways, and we kind of already took a little bit more time than I was hoping. But the last question is this, Dusty. It says, you work with a lot of communities across the state that have successfully passed a bond measure. Could you give us an idea of what happens in the community after one passes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of districts around the state of Montana, and I'm always amazed at the impact that passing a bond has on the community. And that has so many facets of success that come with it. But it's really tied to, when you pass a bond in a community like this, it's a rallying point. It's a point at which the community says, hey, we did this together. We stepped forward together, and look at what we were able to accomplish. This is going to have an impact for generations to come. And that impact is going to not just have a tangible outcome on my kids and their kids, but it's going to be on our kids, grandkids. And when you start to think about that, the community really pulls together, and it becomes this bond. I've just watched the energy level skyrocket in a community, and it makes a statement. It makes a statement that says, not only to the community itself, but it makes a statement to the region and to the state that says, look at what we're about in Glendive. We're about supporting education. We're about moving this community forward. We're a growing community that is fired up about what we can do with our kids, because we know it all starts with a good education.
Absolutely.
If we can create the kind of educational environments in Glendive, they're going to put our students on par with anybody in the country, and we're able to compete, and we're able to send these students off to their next venture well equipped, and having been able to have experiences with things like technology when they get to the workplace or higher ed environment, that the technology that they may see is not new, right? It's something that they're comfortable with and they've been experiencing at Glendive schools because we passed this point, because we invested, because we made this a priority as a community. And the other part that I've seen just have remarkable impacts is when you invest in school buildings, everything follows. The workforce follows, jobs, people wanting to invest in businesses, and that impact has this really incredible ripple effect where I've watched it in Billings, I've watched it in Missoula, I've watched it in smaller communities, I've watched it in Belgrade, kind of all across, running the gamut of community sizes, to see the impact of, we've invested in our schools. And when we did some research on with a recent community on a passing that helping get the bond passed, one of the key elements was how important is the investment in our schools for somebody looking to move to this community? What's the impact? And so this particular community had a lot of had a kind of a real strong medical community, and they found that the number one thing physicians were looking for in moving to a community was the quality of schools. And they simply wanted to see, is the community investing in those schools? Is the community committed to elevating the quality of education? That becomes absolutely essential when you're looking to recruit somebody to a community. So I think, some of those impacts, people, it's hard to think of now because we're all in the throes of let's get through this first phase, but it's going to bring it's kind of an incredible impact on Glendive, and that will last for years and for generations to come.
Right, you made a lot of good points about a lot of different things. Technology and education has changed so much. I mean, if anybody's ever heard me talk about technology, I love talking about it because I love technology myself, but where it's going is pretty crazy. When you look at robotics and artificial intelligence and virtual reality, and it's changing so quickly that we have no idea what this is going to look like in 5 years. I mean, we really don't. And so, how do you prepare kids for an environment that you have no idea what this thing looks like? And if you're not investing in technology, what are you doing? How are you really educating your kids? But so we're trying to put plans together as a school district, and what does that look like, and how do we get our kids to be creative and be able to adapt as well as they possibly can, because they're going to have to know to do that because things are going to change so quickly. They're going to have to know how to adapt. And so being able to put those things in place is really important. But, the last thing I kind of want to say, because we need to wrap this up, is with all of this, I think it's just so vital that I love. Today we're filming this, and it's September 11th, and hats off to every single veteran, anybody who is in that situation. I mean, it's a milestone in our country's history, and it is something that everyone remembers where they were during September 11th, and there's just so many important things about being in this country, and one of them is given the right to vote, and everyone gets the right to vote. And so the ballots are going to be coming out, and you're going to be able to check either no or yes. And I've said from the very beginning, I'm not trying to ask people to vote yes. I'm just asking people to be informed. And I think it's just so important because I do believe we have a really good plan, and being informed so you can make a good educated decision is exactly the right that we get as Americans, and it's pretty cool. And so we're going to continue to strive to get information out there so that people can make a good informed decision for their family. And I think that's super important. So I really appreciate you, Dusty, for coming on and spending this time with us. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to say before we get off, but
I would leave with this step, and I think we talk about the impact of passing a bond like this can have on a community. There's this great Greek proverb that says, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in."
right.
And I think that it's really a great proverb from the standpoint that it talks to exactly what we've been discussing today, the importance of investing in the future, the importance of investing. Somebody did that for all of us, and it's our opportunity to do that for them, to perpetuate Lindab, to perpetuate this region, and the importance of that investment is really the way to think about this moving forward. It's an investment for our kids, which we really couldn't find something more important to place an investment in.
Absolutely. Well, again, I appreciate your time, Dusty, and appreciate everyone else who's watched this. Your time with spending out of your day to kind of get informed and to hear me and Dusty kind of have a conversation. But there'll be more videos. Check out our website, and we got tons of information out there. We're continuing to get frequently asked questions on there, so that we can inform the public. And if you ever need anything, I'm asking everyone, please reach out to me by email or by phone. I have all my information on the website as well. Please reach out. I'd love to answer any questions that we can, just so that you can be informed. So appreciate again for you watching. This is Dusty Eaton and Stefan Schreibeis, and I'm just reminding you to be kind and love like crazy.